people, I always talk about the UCC, which is the Uniform Commercial Code. Now, this Uniform Commercial Code, you would imagine, because it's commercial, has no bearing on us. Now, for a long time, I've researched and looked into this whole straw man scenario where all of your bills and your licenses and your passport and birth certificate and everything, your name is in capitals. And there are political parties in Australia, independent freedom parties, who say if any of these corflutes have names in capitals, you shouldn't vote for them because that's not us. Your birth name is in English. You know, if it was Nicola, it's a big N and then small letters. And these capitals represent commercial. Now, they have been trying to draw humanity into corporate law, commercial law for a long time. I believe ruthlessly it's behind the trans agenda and all of this identifying as other things, because once you publicly declare and legally declare, you know, I identify as a bridge or a cat or a puppy, you're actually taking yourself out of man woman status legally. And once you do that, you're seen differently by the court. So a legal precedent has been set by a guy in Texas yesterday. Right now, all of this UCC commercial code, look it up, do your own research, has been allowed to fraudulently use us, human beings, as secured collateral for a long time, probably at least since 2014. Now, they've been able to do this lawfully because there were legal precedents for it. And yesterday, the legal precedent ended. So let me read to you what has happened. You can look it up in the press. The UCC has now defaulted to the UCC 1. This is I'm not over exaggerating when I say this is the biggest news humanity, human beings have ever received since the birth of Christ. I'm not exaggerating when I say that. This is the end of slavery. Right. So basically, the headline is mankind is free. A guy called Govinda Tidball, I think he's of Indian heritage, but he's a Texan guy. So he says that there was a birth bond issue and he was looking into it, and this is a straw man thing. So he was worried that it was a corruption lever. And as he looked into it, he realized it was. So it's the securitization of the living as a credit value on the dead. Sounds quite confusing. What does that mean? But it means that the living must pay for the dead. So cue the pandemic, right? The living are paying for the dead. So what it basically means is he has children. And once he'd learned all this information, his wife was pregnant and he was about to have a son. When the son was born, because he'd learnt all of this, he, in his birth plan that he gave to the hospital, part of the birth plan was that the family get to keep the cord and the placenta. This is going to sound crazy, but this is what's happened with this UCC 1. Because he'd learned that the UCC, the Uniform Commercial Code, and courts in America had deemed the cord and the placenta, which at the time of birth are alive. They then ask you to, they say to you, would you like to cut the cord? In the moment that you say yes and you cut the cord and the placenta become a deceased twin of the living baby. This is how dark and greedy these people are, and the banks and financial institutions are behind it. What they then do is enslave the living child as a secured creditor to pay the debts of the dead twin, which was never a twin. It was a placenta and a cord. Can you believe this stuff? Let me read on. So he said, your fraudulent birth certificate is a corporatization of you, the living, right? And apparently 100 years ago, there was a guy called Edward Mendel House. And this was the evil way to kill the spawn of people at the moment of birth. And then it goes into the umbilical cord and what I just explained. He said it's all about property ownership. He said if you own a piece of silver and keep it as a piece of silver, it holds its value. But if you mix it with gold, it's considered corrupted. So this is what they were trying to do with us. It's securities fraud. It's a fraudulent security. And he claimed in court, Govinda, that the biological property of his child is his in the birth plan. No consent was given. So then a fraudulent securities instrument was still created, even though he said that in his birth plan. They still considered his son's cord and placenta as a dead twin, right? So they went ahead and did that, even though that was in his birth plan. They really messed with the wrong guy, Jason, right? So they said that he contracted with them, but he didn't. So they tested him to see if he knew what he was really talking about in court. So he believes, he said in court, that we're here to live and experience this planet and serve God, not as collateralization, right? So they make us the collateralization of the living, and that he's created a legal instrument so it's no longer in their hands. He has legally removed it. So it's now known as a public fraud. It's called a perfected claim. You're all going to have to research this on your own. I can actually put a link in of him describing this much better than I, right? These are just the headlines of it. So something called a final declaration has occurred under law. It is now a fact in law, and there is no debate. Anyone can see it. Anyone can bring it into any court case that they have, anyone they like, anywhere in the world. They are now, these people, the financial institutions, are now the debtor of the living. It's been flipped in UCC 1. It's a reversal, and Nasara Jasara is apparently now lawful and in essence. So there is a criminal and a fraudulent side to what they've done. So as per the RICO code in America, people must be paid triple times 3 what was taken from them when they were used as secure collateral. Now, people our age, Jason, in their Cestui Que Vie trust, which is this secure collateral on our lifetime of work, paying the debts of the dead, is approximately, can be up to $1 billion. So they would owe each individual in that case $3 billion. That's what this case defines. It's called a legal precedent under the US code and the UCC code. This is all factual. You're going to die when you see the clip. It's what he said. It's why Doge exists. Doge is using this instrument now. There are lots of institutions involved, financial institutions around the world. And they can no longer do this. So it's a restoration of the living man globally. Physical bodies have been unfairly incorporated by a birth certificate bond with the name in all caps. It takes time to adjust, but they are now in something with the living. I can't read my own writing. They may not use us basically as secure collateral anymore. The all caps fraud is gone. It's over. The institutions will be breaking the law the next time they do this. I'm talking a bill, a fine, a birth certificate, a license, a passport, anything. If they do it in all caps and bring you into corporation, they're breaking the law. It's called a misprism of fraud and a felony by holding the living as secured collateral. He's had a win, Jason. There is now legal precedent. They can't do this to us anymore. And it's the end of slavery. Happy Easter. How about the timing?
It's absolutely extraordinary. That's something that we're all going to have to sink our teeth into and devour and understand what the processes are to be able to deliver on that. But for many of us watching what was going on, to just maybe put it into another practical perspective, there's not a human being living today on Earth that was living before 2020 that hasn't got a right to be a part of a class action against the powers that be that allowed COVID to happen. Now, my gut said to me that at some point, the head of the HHS in the United States, that happens to be RFK Jr., will report to the United States President and to make criminal referrals to the Department of Justice, and that would be Pam Bondi. That the pandemic that was caused by the manipulation and the manufacture and the artificial creation of a virus, that the only way forward from this would be a class action that affects every single person that caught the virus, that was restricted in any way, that was made to take an experimental vaccine.
Well, the
And that
jabbed and the unjabbed have got cases. We had our lives demolished as the unjabbed, and the jabbed had their lives demolished with worry and stress and ill health and death. Yeah, both
Correct.
sides.
And so the point being, therefore, that if this is the case, that the only way that you're going to be able to compensate people at that point is for a complete reset. And when you have a legal precedent explained as you have, it's now putting these steps in place. That's
Yeah,
how big it is.
it's
Where I
huge.
want, where I wanted to go with this, Nicola, was with RFK today with a presser, and he was talking about specifically autism, and he went into some detail. It's a 10-minute clip. I've shared it on my X page, and he specifically refers to a term called epidemic denial, which he's now
Oh,
coined the phrase. So what he's saying is that the rate of autism has gone from say 1 in 10,000 to now he says it's 1 in 31, but it's actually more than that. He says California has the best statistics counting. He says it's now about 1 in 20. 1 in 21, something like some ridiculous amount. So can you think that 1 in 20 boys? I think he even mentioned something like 1 in 12. So that means that in every single sports, soccer team, cricket team today, one child will be autistic based on new numbers that are coming through. Now, given that again, he says this is not mild, this is extreme. He says we're talking about non-verbal boys, we're talking about not toilet trained and banging the head. So this is at the severe end of what is going on. He says we can't put this down any longer and pretend that this is due to better practices of acknowledging and diagnosis. It's absolutely not. And he pointed very specifically to these studies. So we know that in the cabinet meeting of last week, RFK Jr. told the president that he will have an answer by September. He's now coming out on the front foot. So what he's doing is now laying the foundations in real time against a narrative of what is actually going on. So therefore, as we all hoped that we'd do, like I talked about last week, when Pizzagate broke, I expected all these people to be wheeled away in handcuffs. And of course, none of them were. And so it's a process. And this is the point of changing narratives. So again, it comes back to what we're doing as we are getting close to concluding our first ever season of Daily Australian at the end of episode 74, that we are now realizing, and people can just observe, those of you who've been along since the very beginning, how much has this show changed in terms of presentation, quality. We've gone from audio, we've gone to video, the quality of the graphics, the quality of the guests, the quality of the presentation, and all of it is, it's a pretty steep learning curve for what is only 11 weeks in our first ever season. And so we will come back fighting, and we come back and we'll do this better, like we all are, and more power to us and more power to all of us out there who are supporting. We can't do it without you. The thing that I'm going to request, and I'm going to have to just get better at doing it, is please, you must like the videos. You must comment on the videos, even just to say thanks. Yeah, it's so and so here, and we're watching and we're listening. You have to repost. That is the most important thing that you can do. Obviously, we'd like you to follow, and you already are. But please repost these videos or share, whatever the term is on the social media platform. That is what triggers the algorithm. And if you can write a comment on to say this is today's show, if you're interested, it doesn't mean it's an endorsement if you don't like the episode more than one or another, but it's crucial that is the way that you're able to do this. Now, I learned also that there are people that are building massive followings on social media platforms by simply buying followers through the bots. Now, and it's a video that's out there that explains it. And so what there'll be a wall, in India, as an example, a wall of phones. And literally it's one person operating, and they pay for these followers, and then they click and then they follow along, literally hundreds,
we
if not
don't want
thousands.
them. Yeah,
And
we
we
don't
don't
want
and we
that.
don't want that. But the point is, what happens is, the psychology is, if someone buys 1 million followers, then people see that this particular thing's got 1 million followers, and then they go along to get along. They join the bandwagon. This
And
is
it's all the big ones. It's all the big ones you think.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So again, this is the point. So we're trying to do everything we can as authentically and as organically and on literally the smell of an oily rag. But it will take investment. So we are going to also come up with new ways to innovate, to allow our audience to help participate. You certainly can you can opt to subscribe on Substack now and pay for a month or pay for a year at a modest rate. We'll also, when we get to the website, we'll introduce some form of retail that will allow people to be able to purchase different things that will help support. But all of this
Bumper
goes,
stickers.
which is a great idea, and thank you to the person that suggested that, and that's something that we'll work on. So again, it's a game of inches, but I tell you what, by the end of 2025, I don't think people will recognize the quality of what we've been able to put together so far, and we continue to be able to improve.
And I just want to say, I've been concerned about the subject of autism for a long time. You know, it's touched a lot of my friends' lives. So if you go to my Rumble channel, all caps, not because it's corporatization, the White Rabbit Australia, one word, the White Rabbit Australia, you'll have to scroll back a long way because it was last year. There's an interview I did with a biophysicist in Zurich, Switzerland. His name is Andreas Kirchler, and he believes that he has found the cure for autism. In that interview, you will see videos that he plays of children he has cured with a substance called chlorine dioxide. This is not an endorsement by me of chlorine dioxide, but this is an experimental treatment that has cured children. And you see these children before the treatment, and it's one treatment, and after the treatment. And nothing leaves me speechless, but speaking to Dr. Andreas Kirchler did. So if you know anyone experiencing a child with autism, probably because of everything they've done to us, it doesn't matter how they got that way, please go out and check that podcast. I'd also like to thank all the watchers and listeners, because we were just radio originally and we thought we'd probably stick with the voice only format. But you guys seem to be appreciating the sort of TV mode. I mean, we are all programmed for the TV mode. You know, I'm the same at the end of the day, glass of wine and a movie or a TV show. I apologize for our clunkiness in, you know, getting our production standards up, but Jason and I decided to do this because as a venture, because we just couldn't take anymore that there was something missing. Again, there was a vacuum in the media space in Australia, and we may not have gone to newsreader school, but we have gone to the School of Life, and we have done an awful lot of research, an awful lot of radio, and for me, an awful lot of television. And we try and bring those skills, I guess, to bear to bring as much information to you as possible. Information we know you won't hear anyone anywhere else. Now, it has come at great risk to us in our careers and our lives, but it's something we feel we do as a public service, which hopefully, yes, will evolve into a business and eventually a media company. So thank you so much for watching us in our first season on the Daily Australian. Jason, would you like to say anything before we go for the last time this season?
Well, thank you again for your support, Nicola. Thank you for your faith in me to be able to put together a show that, honestly, it feels like 1 + 1 = 3. Uh, because we all bring something different to the table. And the one thing is the dynamic. What we didn't want to do was to remain in our silos. We knew that we had to collaborate, but we also needed to come from various different perspectives. Just wishing everyone a happy Easter in the middle of the school holiday period. And it's a wonderful time to just take time out, relax and enjoy and look onwards and upwards, because yes, there are threats, but at the same time, the best days are ahead of us. That is absolutely certain, and it comes from within. We will be here to hold your hand, lead the way, if you will, through bringing that information to you, both the good and the bad, and to work for what has to be the best times ahead of us.
And imagine how fantastic things are going to be if we do manage to navigate and traverse what is probably the most evil, most malevolent, most difficult, most heartbreaking time in human history. And it is an amazing time to be alive, as well as all the awful things that we've had to deal with. There's a reason that all of us are alive. You know, if you think about how long human history is, there's a reason why we, in particular, our souls are alive at this time. And it's to help each other. And we can do that. And we can do that by stopping a small amount of people with such levels of greed you cannot even imagine. And this legal precedent, UCC1 of the Commercial Code, is about to release humanity from slavery, if it hasn't already. And the fact that this has happened on the eve of Good Friday, I think is a message from heaven. Have a fantastic Easter. Thank you for listening to myself, Nicola Charles, and my co host and co producer, Jason Olborn. We will do this all over again next Tuesday. See you then.